So besides the HVAC manufacturing entity, Contoso also have a smaller one, which is about vending machines. Because that entity doesn't have the skills and the resources to build their own IoT solution end-to-end, leveraging the past services from Azure IoT, they can leverage the Microsoft IoT Central solution. I want to show you the various parts of IoT Central by wearing different hats once again. The first hat I'm going to wear is the operator hat. What you're seeing right now on my screen is the operator view of this Contoso Vending Management IoT Central solution. And from here, I can do several things. I have a high-level landing page. The main thing as an operator that I'm interested into is visualizing different device types. And within these device types, like let me pick, for example, refrigerated vending machines. And in there, I can see the various, in our case, simulated vending machines, but I can actually monitor each of them. I can visualize what the actual measurements from all the sensors on these very particular refrigerator machine and actually get a good grasp of their actual health. There's a dashboard that has been created for this device type that I can also dive into. I can see some KPIs here that are monitored for this device type. I can visualize some of its settings, like the fan speed. I can see the data real time actually about these various sensors. So it's a very useful dashboard that as an operator I can take advantage of to have a very nice and fast snapshot of the health of my machine. So now if I look at the rules for that device, what I can do is actually edit some of these rules. I can visualize them first. I can see the criteria, the name, and I can actually edit and modify them. Here in our case, we have a rule that will monitor for temperature that is too high. And what it's going to do is actually send an email when that happens. For the device, I can also visualize what we call the properties. This is the metadata that is shared by the device with the Microsoft IoT Central solution. It tells me what kind of model, when it's been manufactured, the serial number. All that information allows me to have a fine understanding of which device it is and what's running on this guy. The settings section allows me to actually interact with that device. I can change the fan speed, for example, here real quick. So let me switch that to a different RPM value from 5 to 3. And I can see that the Microsoft IoT Central solution is actually sending that configuration to the device and is waiting for that device to be in sync. So I can see now it's been synced, and I have this regular updates from device to IoT Central in terms of measuring what's going on. So you see, like I have this nice view of my refrigerator here. So as an operator, I can already do a lot of things, monitor my devices. But what I think would be more interesting right now is actually switch hat. How did all of that arrive in my IoT Central solution? So what I will do is actually create a new device type. Now I'm wearing the solution builder hat. And the first thing I'm doing actually is switching to that builder mode. And I can create a new device template. And that device template will actually be a custom one. And I will call it something like, pizza vending machine. And when I create this new device type, what happens is IoT Central will create that infrastructure, but also will create a first simulated device. It's going to be my reference device. The first thing I want to do in there is actually create some what we call measurements. I want to add some telemetry. The first one will be temperature, and the field will be called temp. It will be in Celsius. It will go from 0 to 100, for example. And I don't need decimals, and I like the color. I will say just save from here. I can create another measurement, which will be telemetry again, and I will have this one being humidity, pretty, typical in a vending machine, and it will be a percentage, and it will go from 0 to 100. And for this one, I'm going to pick a different color. So now I have my two measurements for that device that have been created. I can also define settings. So one of the settings I want to define, once again, as a builder, is, for example, the fan speed. So I can define fan speed, and that's going to be fan speed as the name underneath. And I can actually add some interesting values to or parameters to that text field here. Not much that I want to customize. So what I will do actually is set an initial value, which I need. I will set 20% by default, and then I can do save, right? So this defines actually what the operator will see. So you see I can also move that so that when he's going to switch to the settings view for that vending, so the type of device is going to have this particular item at that position. In properties, what I can do now is do something else. I can actually add a date, for example, and put a date like manufacturing date. And this one will be manufacturing date as the actual field name. I don't need an actual time. I have an initial value, which is today, and it is a required field, right? So let's define that as is. So this is one of my properties that the operator, once again, will be able to see. And now what I want to do is define the dashboard. What is it that the user will see in that nice dashboard? So the first one I can add, you remember, I added temperature. I can show a legend. I want to have the past week, and it's going to be temperature here. And I saved this one. So this chart actually will show the real-time temperature and will show that 1 week of data. I can add another one, which is, for example, the bar chart. I would say humidity, tracking that way. Past week is going to be humidity. You get the idea. But eventually you can say, oh, see, I want some KPI here. KPI would be health, let's say. And I want to say temperature and average. And look at that for the past months, for example. And I will have a monthly tracking of that KPI here, which is health. And I can move it up there, right? So you can see as well that I can start moving around my charts. I can really do that graphical editing of this dashboard. So now I have this dashboard all ready and prepared. What I can do is make it available for my operators. And so if I go back to my device view, I remove the edit one. I can see now there's a pizza vending machine dashboard, and you can see the exact dashboard that I just created a minute ago. Now what I want to do is actually switch gear. We've seen what the operator visualizes. We've seen how the builder interacts with Microsoft IoT Central to create these device types and the dashboards that the operator will be using. But now how about connecting a real device? So if I want to do that, what I will do is actually switch into that other device type, which is called drive-up vending machine, right? And here I can see I only have a simulated device. What I need to do is create a real device. And when I do that, basically it creates an entity into my IoT Central solution, which happens to be leveraging the Azure IoT PaaS services in the backend. So it's an Azure IoT Hub, which is behind. So it created a device identity for that real device. And I want to connect a real piece of code. And for that, I need to have this connection string, which is unique to the device, and I will be using in a Node application in our case. So I have a piece of code ready here, which is very simple Node application using the Azure IoT SDK for Node. And it's basically sending telemetry data, the temperature and humidity expected, and will be able to respond to some commands, like the fan speed, for example, or others. I'm going to paste that connection string here to allow my device to connect to that instance of IoT Hub and hence connect into my IoT Central solution. And what I will do is run that drive up. I need to save the file. And I will start the file here. So the device is starting. It will connect to the IoT Hub instance and will start sending telemetry data. And when I go back to my dashboard for that very device, what I will see is actually the measurements that will start flowing as the telemetry data is received into IoT Central. And boom, we have the real-time data that is coming in, and we're seeing the outdoor temperature in our case here that is shown on this graph. So you've seen how our Contoso Vending team is able to create a full-blown UI, a dashboard, and a solution into IoT Central. Last but not least, I want to show you how they are able now also to create that interface for their customers, for them to have access to the data in IoT Central. They have an administration page where they can actually define settings for the application, a name, a nice UI, a nice icon. They can also then define users, so they can assign roles to the various users that they want to give access to the solution. So they can have one customer, which is, for example, a building where they have several vending machines. They can create a couple of accounts for them that will be just read only on that telemetry, will be able to see the dashboards and see how the vending machines are doing. And that's how I can actually offer that as a dashboard for my customers. So you've just seen how easy and just in a matter of minutes, we're able to create a full end-to-end IoT solution using IoT Central, from defining device types to defining dashboards with all the data we need our customers to watch and see, to defining what the administration settings are, such as the roles, the users, and so on. All of that from a web page without touching any code into IoT Central. Thanks for watching this video about Azure IoT. And now if you want to learn more, you can visit internetofyourthings.com and, try it out.